the status quo, and is not enough of that.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, don't get me going.
I'm only cutting you short again because I've got the mayor of this fascinating town in the United States, Benjamin Romero, to talk to. It's a leap year, and today, of course, is the leap day, and about 3,000 New Zealanders were born on one. And for 3 out of every 4 years, or sometimes 7 out of every 8, their birthdays don't exist, and they have to choose to celebrate them either on February the 28th or on March the 1st. And each year, leap babies are celebrated with the leap year birthday celebration in the town of Anthony, which straddles the border between Texas and New Mexico, and it's officially the leap year capital of the world. It was declared so in 1988. And Benjamin Romero is the mayor of Anthony. Hello, Benjamin. He's the self-effacing mayor. No, I don't think he is, actually. I just think we can't hear him.
We can only talk to him. This is the day.
Yeah, I gotta hear. I can't hear you too well. You gotta speak up a little bit.
That's all right. It's an interesting name for a town you've got there. How did the town get its name?
Anthony, Texas was incorporated officially in 1950, but the community was around since early 1890.
Wow.
So it's been there for a long time. It's a small stop, and it's actually part of the historic Don Oñate or Don de Juan Oñate Trail that used to be around when the settlers used to come all the way down.
Oh, wow.
Texas used to be Mexico.
Yeah. So you go way back.
All the way up. Yeah, and this was one of the main areas and travel routes from people, conquistadors, and everything coming up from Mexico all the way up to what is now California.
Gee, Benjamin, you've got a long history. How do you celebrate people born in a leap year with your festival? What do you do?
Well, actually, there's we have it's a small town, but we're centrally located in between El Paso, Texas, and Las Cruces, New Mexico. We're right on the border of the furthest west tip of Texas. And basically, we're the leap year capital of the world, and we give everyone a tour of this historic region. We've had everybody from Billy the Kid come through here, and the list goes on. And we have so many sites and historic sites, and a lot of places to see and visit. Anything from hiking to we have actually one of the oldest old style theaters that was built back in 1910 here that is still in its beauty.
Benjamin, you've got leap year babies coming from all over the world. I know there are Australians. Are there any New Zealanders? Have you ever had Kiwis in the past come through?
Actually, the founder, Marianne Brown, said that there has been. This year, we actually had 40 people from all around the country come out. So it's been really interesting, and this is the first year that the town of Anthony, Texas, has actually spearheaded the project. So now that we're developing a budget, we have more funding to really, wow the visitors that come here and really show them a great time here in Anthony, Texas.
Great to talk to you, and I hope your celebrations go off really well. That's Benjamin Romero, the mayor, and they have a wine tasting, a parade. I think there's a parade tomorrow, and also cowboy reenactments. And this is something you may not have thought of. If you're on a salary, you just work today for nothing. Today's been a gift to your employer. I don't think everybody thinks about that, but it's
really good when you're self-employed.
That's right. Very good to have both of you on this interesting panel today.
Thank you,
Gary
John.
Moore, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And Simon Pound, nice to see you again, Simon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we are back tomorrow with the panel and shortly Checkpoints with John Campbell.
Good everyone, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm John Campbell, and on behalf of the Checkpoint team, thank you for joining us. Tonight, Ranganui Walker, a man determined that we would see our country through more than only Pākehā eyes. Also tonight, the woman behind the Oscars So White campaign joins us on the programme. Not a single one of the 20 acting nominations for the Oscars was non-white, so with 3 words, she set out to do something about that. The minimum wage up 50 cents. The campaign for the living wage pushing on. Also, we look at both and the politics of the flag referendum. John Key throws down the gauntlet. His opponents pick it up. But first, here's Leilani Mamoisia with Radio New Zealand News.
Kia ora, good evening. A security guard says he ran from the Ashburton Work and Income Office one day in 2014 after he saw the receptionist being shot. 49-year-old Russell Tully is on trial at the High Court in Christchurch for the murders of Peggy Noble and Lee Cleveland and the attempted murder of 2 of their colleagues. The security guard, Neville Tahere, told the court he first noticed the accused when he was already inside with a gun. Mr Tahere says he ran off after the shooting started but returned when he saw Mr Tully leave the office.
I could hear Lindy yelling about her leg, my leg. And also there was another case manager swearing and cursing and asking if anybody had called the police.
Security guard Neville Tahere. A man who had been recovering well at Waikato Hospital died within 4 days following a botched transfer to a rehabilitation facility. The public health watchdog has found that the Waikato District Health Board and ABI Rehabilitation New Zealand were both at fault. Our health correspondent Karen Brown reports.
Anthony Hill says the 58-year-old had sustained multiple injuries in an accident but was making good progress when he was transferred for rehabilitation closer to his home. That occurred late one Friday night in 2012, but there was no doctor on hand at the rehabilitation facility to assess him. Poor documentation and communication by the DHB meant he did not receive all the treatment that had been prescribed for him for deep vein thrombosis and pain relief. He died without having been seen by a doctor at the facility. Mr Hill says that delay was unreasonable and wholly unacceptable. This is Karen Brown.
Tributes are being paid to the noted Māori academic and writer on Māori issues, Dr Ranganui Walker, who has died at his Auckland home. He was 83. Dr Walker dedicated much of his life to documenting significant historical events from a Māori perspective and was a leader in many of the debates and developments in Te Ao Māori. His biographer Paul Spoonley says Dr Walker was able to work with anyone.
He's a great New Zealander. His public life was just exemplary. He did a hell of a lot for this country in many different ways. I think he should be remembered for the fact that he went out on a limb when it was very difficult to do so. And he wrote those listener columns, he talked to people in the media and radio and television, and he conveyed what was at times a very unpopular message.
Paul Spoonley. Ranganui Walker once said he believed his greatest contribution had been to act as a mediator between Māori and Pākehā. There's alarm in Northland at suggestions Kiwi Rail's about to mothball a stretch of the Northern Line. It's scrapping its contract with the Marusumi woodchip company to rail logs from the far north to Whangarei. The Transport Minister Simon Bridges says there's no intention to close the Northland Line, but the Northland MP Winston Peters says he has documents showing there'll be no trains running north of Kauri near Whangarei after August. And the Marusumi woodchip company's comments confirm that. It says Kiwi Rails declined to renew the freight contract when it expires in August because the line's uneconomic. The adult minimum hourly wage will rise 50 cents to $15.25 from April the 1st. The starting out and training hourly minimum wage rates will increase from $11.80 to $12.20 per hour, remaining at 80% of the adult minimum wage. Restaurateur John Campbell launched his second tilt at the Auckland Mayoralty today with a heated exchange in which he said there were lies and corruption in city politics. Reporters questioned Mr. Campbell about his failure to give interviews in 2013 after his campaign was accused of revealing the Mayor Len Brown's extramarital affair. He also denied that he was introducing dirty politics to his new campaign by hiring advisors Carrot Graham and Simon Lusk, who were mentioned in Nikki Hager's book of the same name.
There's no dirty politics in my campaign, but let me tell you something, if you want to talk about dirty politics. You want to talk about dirty politics? Yeah. It was Len's team that actually got them to turn the media on to me. That's dirty politics.
Auckland mayoral candidate John Campbell, who's promising a 10% rates reduction. Two people are dead and State Highway 1 is closed following a crash involving a car and a truck in Canterbury. The crash was on the Hunderley Road, about 5 kilometres north of the Conway River. Emergency services are still at the scene and the road is expected to be closed until at least 6:30. Diversions are in place. Into sports now, the Kiwis and Sydney Roosters centre Sean Kenny-Dowell has been cleared of domestic violence offences against his former partner Jessica Peris. Magistrate Gregory Grogan handed down his verdict in a Sydney court following a 3-day trial last week. Kenny-Dowell was found not guilty of all 11 charges, which included assault and intimidation. The Hurricanes coach Chris Boyd says last year's Super Rugby runners-up have been subjected to a brutal review of their opening loss to the ACT Brumbies in Canberra. The Hurricanes were trounced 52-10 on Friday night, conceding 7 tries. Boyd says they conceded points too softly, struggled at the breakdown and simply made too many errors, prompting the frank review.
There wasn't any physical violence, but it was reasonably close. Anytime you have a very subpar performance, you've just got to take it on the chin and accept that it didn't go well, try and pick out why that was and correct it, but the finger got pointed fairly strongly.
The Hurricanes coach Chris Boyd. And veteran men's Black Sticks Phil Burrows, Andy Hayward and Steve Edwards have been left out of the 2016 national squad in the lead-up to this year's Rio Olympics. Ryan Archibald and Simon Child are the most experienced members in the 25-player squad. And that's the news.
Jolted awake.
It's like a terrier with a rat. It doesn't just shake, it sort of does side to side. A fairly unpleasant beast.
Just in time.
The Canterbury's loaded, right up to the gunnels with water tanks, wood, corrugated iron, things like that.
A junkyard fairground.
You'll see them cranking gear levers and riding bikes to propel their children in the mini Ferris wheels and merry-go-rounds, and the kids are having such a ball.
The art of news. Susie Ferguson and Guy Espiner morning report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, the government statistician on what kind of information gets collected about you and who can use it. And after 10, designing better places to die. We speak to architect Alison Killing. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after morning report on RNZ National.
In the Met Service weather to midnight tomorrow. In Northland, heavy falls and possible thunderstorms tomorrow morning. Auckland to Waitomo, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Taihape, Tau Maranui. Tomorrow, rain about Coromandel and a few brief falls reaching Auckland, fine spells and isolated afternoon or evening elsewhere. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, occasional rain, briefly heavy, easing tomorrow and becoming mainly confined to the ranges from afternoon. Taranaki to Wellington, Wairarapa and Nelson, fine and cloudy periods. Marlborough, Canterbury, a few showers clearing overnight or morning and long fine spells tomorrow afternoon. Buller in Westland is fine apart from showers in Buller clearing later. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, a few showers about Southland and southern Fiordland, fine elsewhere. And the Chatham Islands, there's a few showers, and I'll be back with news headlines at 5:30. It's now 5:09.
Thanks, Leilani. See you in 21 minutes. The High Court in Christchurch has heard emotional testimony from those inside the Ashburton Work and Income Office at the time of the fatal shooting. The trial of Russell Tully is continuing. He's charged, of course, with the murder of Peggy Noble and Lee Cleveland and attempted murder of 2 of their colleagues. Tully was removed from court this morning after yet another outburst.
It's apparent that you will not desist,
Trial fixing by judge.
remain quiet in court and therefore allow the trial to continue as it should.
Well, you give me my legal obligations. You give me
Tully, will you remain quiet, please?
medical help. You give me a lawyer so I can carry on.
All right, thank you.
Everyone will be happy.
Correction staff, you can remove Mr. Tully.
Once Mr. Tully was removed, court proceedings continued with the jury hearing from some of the Crown's key witnesses. Our reporter Sally Murphy has been in court. Hi Sally, what did those witnesses say today?
Well, within the last hour, we've heard from Kim Adams, who, of course, was a WINS employee. She was there on the day of the shooting. She got very emotional as she recalled what happened. She said she was down the back of the office when she heard an explosion, and as she turned towards the reception area, she saw, of course, the gunman wearing a balaclava. She says she just went into shock and her body felt like lead. She said that she turned to escape and run into another room, and she heard she felt a gush of wind across her face. And of course we heard in the Crown's opening address last week that in fact was a bullet that the gunman had fired at her. She said once she got into another room, she was able to see the gunman walking around the office, and she heard about 3 more shots before she ran outside the building. We also heard from Lucy Waller. She was a young woman who was in line at the reception when she saw the gunman walk into the office. She says that he walked straight past her and she witnessed him pull his gun up to the receptionist Peggy Noble and of course fire the fatal shot. She says she immediately ran out of the office, and while she was running across the road she also heard 3 or 4 more gunshots. She also got emotional, and as she recalled her last moment in the office, her last memory being that of Peggy Noble screaming. The court also heard from the security guard at the office, Neville Tahiri. He says that he didn't see the gunman walk into the office, but he noticed the balaclava wearing man go up to Peggy Noble, and he also witnessed her being shot. He says he also, with the other people in the reception line, ran out of the office and tried to get help. He says after a few minutes he saw the gunman leave the office and he decided to go back in. When he did, he heard Lindy Curtis screaming, "My leg, my leg." Of course, we've heard that she has been shot in her leg, and he heard other caseworkers in the office cursing and screaming for someone to call the police.
Sally, we heard audio just before we crossed to you of Tully being removed from court. Was he back in court to hear any of these witnesses give testimony against him?
No, well, he was asked at lunchtime again if he wanted to return to court, as has happened in the last week as well, but he declined. As we heard his outburst, he was kicked out within 3 minutes of the court proceedings beginning this morning. Justice Manda addressed the jury like he did last week after another outburst, that they should ignore Mr Tully's behaviour and just focus on the evidence at hand.
Sally Murphy live from outside the Christchurch High Court. Thank you. It's 13.5 minutes past 5. Coming up, a tribute to Ranginui Walker, a look back over his extraordinary life. Also, the Oscars are on. We talked to the woman who launched the Oscars So White hashtag, which has made a real difference to what the Academy will do in the future. But let's look at the adult minimum hourly wage. It's going to rise by 50 cents to $15.25 from April the 1st, so just over a month away. The starting out training hourly minimum wages rates will rise from $11.80 to $12.20 per hour. That remains at 80% of the adult minimum wage, so that just stays in line at 80%. Since 2009, the national-led government has raised the adult minimum wage by $2.75. The Prime Minister, John Campbell, says this year's increase will directly benefit almost 153,000 workers and will increase wages throughout the economy by $75 million a year.
When setting the minimum wage, it's important to strike the right balance between protecting our lowest paid workers and ensuring jobs are not lost. Since coming to office, we've put the minimum wage up every year, but in a gradual and sustainable way. New Zealand already has a very generous minimum wage compared to other countries. The latest increase will keep the minimum wage at around 50% of the average hourly rate, which is one of the highest proportions in the OECD.
That's the Prime Minister speaking a short time ago. The Council of Trade Unions says the gap between the new minimum wage and what they call a living wage is still too big. $19.80 an hour is what living wage campaigners believe workers need to earn to put food on the table and pay the bills while maintaining a decent standard of living. Their new rate was announced this afternoon and means those already on the living wage are in for a pay rise. Let's look at what that means with Alex Ashton.
3,000 ice blocks. We make our ice blocks here. We make our Little Island ice cream, which is our coconut cream ice cream.
James Crowe co-owns an ice cream company called Tommy and James. He employs a dozen full-time staff at their Auckland-based factory and office and pays them all a living wage.
Paying them any less than living wage would mean we're just devaluing them at that very base level. So everyone feels like they're being paid fairly, and they're being paid at a level that if they sit with their group of friends and their friends are all complaining about how hard work was, they can still say work was tough, but they know they're taking away a few extra dollars per hour to work for us.
The lobby group Living Wage Aotearoa releases a new rate each year, which it says is in line with average wage growth. This year it's gone up by 55 cents an hour to $19.80. The group's national convener, Annie Newman, says it's still not a lot of money, but it's at least enough to survive on.
It covers the basics, but it covers some of those essentials that people are often juggling on poverty wages, such as having a bit of time out with the family, being able to pay for a small amount of insurance, being able to take transport. So it's considered a very conservative and limited amount of money, but it's enough to live a decent life.
Annie Newman says the number of businesses registered as living wage employers has gone from 27 to 47 nationwide in a year. But it's not just private employers ditching the minimum. The Wellington City Council's been paying its staff a living wage for a couple of years. The city's Deputy Mayor, Justin Lester, says while the extra wage costs ratepayers a few cents each a year, it's better value in the long run.
But we think the value in reduced turnover and absenteeism and a more productive work environment have more than outweighed any costs, any financial costs.
The council's move, though, wasn't without its critics. Wellington's Chamber of Commerce is now seeking a judicial review of the council's latest decision to extend it to contracted security guards. Today, the minimum wage was also increased to $15.25, $4.55 short of the new living wage. The Council of Trade Unions President, Richard Wagstaff, says the two figures are just too far apart.
It's progress, but not enough progress. We're really treading water with these minuscule increases every year or two. We need to do a real jolt so that people on the minimum wage are actually earning enough to live properly, and that's really why we have such a gap between the living wage rate and the minimum wage rate.
The Prime Minister, John Campbell, says the government can only control the minimum wage, and he pays little attention to the living wage.
The advice that we have from MB is that if the living wage was adopted at broadly just under $20 an hour, it would impact an estimated 30 to 35,000 jobs. That's the sort of estimates that they make. So obviously as Prime Minister, my responsibilities are to try as best I can to raise the minimum wage while not putting at risk those jobs. The Department of Labour advice, or the MB advice, is that at $15.25 it won't put any pressure on current employment.
Employers who are registered with Living Wage Aotearoa have 4 months to change to the increased rate, which officially comes into effect at the start of July. For Checkpoint, Alex Ashton.
Restaurateur John Paulino officially launched his second run at the Auckland Mayoralty this afternoon. Mr. Paulino faced heated questions from journalists gathered at the launch about his failure to give interviews in 2013 after his loss to Mayor Len Brown. He also faced questions about his involvement in publicity about an extramarital affair admitted by Mr. Brown. Our Auckland Issues correspondent Todd Nile was the only journalist to request a one-on-one interview with Mr. Paulino today. He began by asking him why he refused to do media interviews after his loss in 2013.
Like I said, I sent out a press release. If the media is not interested in that press release, I'm sorry. I am not going to enter someone else's dogfight just to please the media. The public knew I had nothing to do with it. You have two people there. You have the mayor and you have his mistress. I'm not part of it. It wasn't me who actually was found with my pants down in Ngāti Whātua room. It wasn't me who was taking his mistress to free hotel rooms in Sky City. It wasn't me. That wasn't me.
And your silence wouldn't have mattered if you hadn't come back now and decided to run again for the biggest directly elected job in the country and left all of those questions that people might have liked to ask you about unanswered.
But the public weren't interested in that. It was the media that was interested in that. I care about the public, the people. I've talked to the people. I go through over 1,000 people a week at this restaurant here, and a couple of hundred come up every week and ask me if I'm going to run. They never mention Bevan, and the ones that do, well, they go, we didn't believe it anyway. People don't believe that. They look at the characters we're talking about here, these two characters and myself. Who do they believe? Well, why wouldn't they believe me? You know, there's no dirt on me. There's nothing in my closets. So why should I actually stand up and have to defend someone else's lie? I don't need to do that.
Let's do the 3 unanswered questions. When did you first find out about a relationship between Bevan Schwung and the mayor?
When the story broke.
She says she's on record in an interview that can still be viewed that she talked to you about it the day before the election.
Well, she lied.
Not true. Never discussed it with her. And did you ever discuss with her the consequences of how that affair might be used to topple the mayor before or after the election?
Do you remember in one of her interviews, she said, John told me it won't go to press. The reason why it wouldn't go to press was because we weren't talking about an affair. She was talking about her being harassed by the mayor.
Luigi Wiwiji was more deeply involved on the face of it than you were in that. Have you maintained contact with him?
Like once a year, we email each other, or something's coming up. Like when he knew there was going to be some press about his company here in New Zealand, he just gave me a heads up. Look, they're going to talk about it. They'll probably mention your name.
Where do you see the space for you in this mayoral contest? There are already 2 established centre-right candidates in the running. You're coming in as the 3rd. Where's the space?
You know, I got to tell you, I really hate the labels of left and center-right. I'm for the people. Now, my views are center-right because when I want to help the people, I want to give them jobs. If I was left, I'd be just giving them support. But what happens when that support runs out? What happens when there's 300,000 more people moving to Auckland and there's no jobs for these people because council hasn't made it easy for businesses to open up and grow? That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about left or right. It just so happens that my views and how I will go about building business is a center-right view. That's the only difference.
Going back to 2013, in the same way that for the Mayor Len Brown, he was elected before this became public, the alleged involvement of members of your campaign also became public after the campaign. How can you feel that the support you got then will return this time, given what people now know or think or believe about what went on?
Well, you know what? I had almost 110,000 votes. I could pretty much assure you that 110,000 people are saying, we wish he got in. Because they're struggling right now, and they wish Len didn't get in.
But that 110,000 was before people knew of the affair and who might have known what and been involved how.
As I told you, people don't believe it. You look at those 2 characters and you look at me. Like I said, they couldn't find any dirt on me, so they had to make it up. Why is this girl on my team? Tell me, why is she in the office trying to help us out, do Chinese dinners and all to raise funds, and she's sleeping with the mayor? Seriously? I'm sorry, there's something very wrong with that.
John Paulino talking to Todd Nile. It's 23 and a half minutes past 5. Coming up next on Checkpoint, the stars have strolled the red carpet. The carpet is red, but the question is, why are the Oscars so white? We asked the woman who came up with that hashtag, and tributes pour in for Dr. Ranginui Walker, who died last night. That is coming up. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us, Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. or text 2101. And don't forget, you can watch us online. We're streaming on the Radio New Zealand website, and we're on Freeview Channel 50. However you're doing so, thank you for joining us. It is, of course, Oscar night. And if you like placing wagers on the acting categories, the safest bet of all would have been that a white person will win them. This afternoon, civil rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton led a protest in Hollywood over a striking lack of diversity.
We're here today, and there are gatherings that have been called in the last few days to put the Academy and the movie industry on notice that last year, when they came with an all-white nominations at the top of the Oscar night, they said, we'll do better, give us a chance. We did. They did nothing.
In Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress and Best Supporting Actor, a total of 20 nominees. There are no black people, no Hispanic people, no Asian people, no gay people, no one, in fact, but straight white folk, at least, although obviously there was no way around this. 10 of those nominees are women. The quintet nominated for the Directing Oscar didn't even manage that. I see Mark Rylance has just won Best Supporting Actor for Bridge of Spies. Now, noticing this when the nominees were announced, a lawyer, writer, editor and activist named April Rain tweeted, "Oscars so white they asked to touch my hair." The hashtag Oscars so white took off to such a great extent that the Academy was compelled to listen. A commitment was announced to double the number of women and ethnic minority members of the Academy by 2020. Meaningful change. Earlier this afternoon, the Women Behind a movement that began with 3 words reflected on that achievement.
I think we see the response from the Academy itself, which has made the most systemic changes to its structure and to its voting system since it was enacted over 80 years ago. So there are serious changes afoot, and they will be a good step, but there's still much more that needs to be done.
When you tweeted Oscars so white, did you ever, for a moment, think that it would take off to this extent?
No, I didn't. There's never any way to know what's going to go viral or be very popular on social media, but I am gratified by the fact that millions of people literally around the world, just as I'm talking to you now, are discussing this very important issue, not just with respect to the Oscars, but there are other countries talking about the diversity in their films as well, and so I'm very gratified by that.
Do you think the appeal of the statement is simply that it's true? It's 3 words and it's true.
Well, I think that it's an easy rallying cry. I think it's easy for people to sort of galvanize around this issue and understand the basic premise and then want to learn more about the Academy and how factual it is when you look at the actual nominees, not just of actors and actresses, but also of those behind the camera, the directors, the cinematographers, the producers, all could stand to have more inclusion within their ranks.
Is this also a broader insight into American society per se across the board? Because Hollywood is meant to be purportedly liberal, inclusive, risk-taking, pioneering. So if this is what Hollywood and the Oscars are like, what is more conservative America like?
Well, I don't know that it's true that Hollywood is liberal. I think that is something that the media has a label that is placed on it. But in fact, we've seen just the opposite, not just with the Academy, but in the types of films that studios greenlight all the time. So if the entertainment industry is supposed to be a microcosm of society, then we all need to do better. But this is an issue, the issue of the lack of marginalized communities participating fully in the process. It extends far beyond just the entertainment industry. So it's not just the Oscars, it's not just film, but we're having the same types of problems in corporations. Regardless of where you work, you're still experiencing these issues. And in fact, it's a worldwide problem.
April Rain, the woman behind the hashtag Oscars so white. The awards are still coming, but here are some of the notable winners so far. Mark Rylance won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, the unflappable Russian secret agent, and Steven Spielberg's Cold War drama Bridge of Spies. Swedish actress Alicia Vikander won the Supporting Actress Oscar for transgender movie The Danish Girl, and coming of age film Inside Out won the Best Animated Feature Film. Spotlight and The Big Short took home Oscars for original and adapted screenplays, respectively. After 6, we'll be crossing to the entertainment journalist Sandro Monetti in Los Angeles for the latest on the big prizes for the night, bringing us nicely to 5:30, and Leilani is here with the RNZ headlines.
A security guard says he ran from the Ashburton Work and Income Office after he saw the receptionist being shot. Russell Tully is on trial in the High Court in Christchurch for the 2014 murders of Peggy Noble and Lee Cleveland and the attempted murders of two of their colleagues. Neville Tahere told the court he first noticed the accused when he was already inside with a gun. Mr Tahere says he ran off after the shooting started, but returned when he saw Mr Tully leave the office. The Prime Minister, John Campbell, says it's likely the government will offer more support to Fiji in the wake of Tropical Cyclone Winston. The Foreign Minister, Mari Macaulay, is in Fiji today to meet with response staff and hold meetings with the Fiji government. New Zealand has contributed $3.2 million to the relief efforts so far, and the Defence Force is helping deliver supplies and repair damage to critical infrastructure. The death toll rose by 1 today to 43. The Defence Force says it won't change the way it deals with media despite shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars on a failed defamation case. The journalist John Stevenson took the case after the force issued a news statement implying he lied about a visit to Afghanistan. A man who had been recovering well at Waikato Hospital died within 4 days following a botched transfer to a rehabilitation facility. The public health watchdog has found the Waikato District Health Board and ABI Rehabilitation New Zealand were both at fault. The adult minimum hourly wage will rise 50 cents to $15.25 from April the 1st. And suggestions Kiwi Rail's about to mothball a stretch of line that carries logs in Northland are causing alarm. And it's 5:31.
So we'll have more on that story coming up about the train line north of Whangarei. Thanks, Leilani. Let's talk business now with Nona Peltier. Nona's business confidence survey. And business confidence slumped.
Yeah, well, not surprising, really, given the current global economic conditions. We got some warnings from the G20 over the weekend when the central bank governors met and the finance ministers. And so we didn't have a business confidence survey in January, so we had one in February. So that's caught up, and now we've seen the business confidence come off quite a lot. In fact, the ANZ were, they've been rather, I wouldn't want to say the word bullish, but they haven't been expecting the Reserve Bank to cut interest rates. They've changed their forecast
They've been
now.
quite pointed about that, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they've been predicting a sort of status quo situation.
Well, pretty much. They thought that the confidence that we'd seen late in December was quite strong, and there were lots of positive indicators through January and then, of course, through February. But now the tune has changed.
Right. So how's it changed? Because this was an organisation effectively saying no stimulus required. Now what are they saying?
Well, the boil's certainly come off. People are like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should be concerned. The indicators are still pretty positive but there's room now for the Reserve Bank to move, and so the dollar moved.
So is that what ANZ's saying? So they're saying, hold on a sec, we change our mind, the Reserve Bank should bring the OCR down.
Yeah, a couple of times this year. And
so if that's a couple of times, that's by 0.5%, right?
Yeah, and also the BNZ, well, they've also been in the same camp as the ANZ. They're now changed their tune a little bit too. They're saying, okay, we won't be super surprised if this happens. However, that's not quite our forecast yet. So they're still sitting on the other side of the fence. But, the news is not great. For some, the New Zealand Oil and Gas reported today, one of the last big companies to report in the current, so we've kind of run the course now. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's been a heap, although it's kept everyone gainfully employed,
exactly.
Right? Great.
Yeah, New Zealand Oil and Gas, their result really shows the downturn in the oil prices, which of course is what's been driving all of this. And their first half loss, they made a loss, 27.6 million, compared with a gain of 7.7 a year earlier. And they've said that they're going to not do any more development or exploration for the foreseeable future. And they said that within 2 years, the Tui field could become uneconomical. So these are dire forecasts for the oil industry.
Yeah. Okay, so that's New Zealand Oil and Gas. What did the market do generally today?
Well, actually, it was a little change, just like it was on Friday, up 6 points to 6,230. The New Zealand dollar fell just a touch there on that ANZ confidence survey down to 65.7 US cents and 92.1 Australian.
Nina Peltier, our Auckland business reporter. Thanks so much, Nina. The time on Checkpoint is coming up to 25 minutes to 6. The Prime Minister has been accused of using threats and scare tactics in a bid to persuade people to choose the alternative flag. The referendum to choose between the current flag and the Carl Lockwood design begins this Thursday. John Key claims this will be the last chance the country has to make a change unless New Zealand becomes a republic, which he says will not happen in his lifetime. Our political reporter May Heron has more.
Later this week, the public can finally start choosing whether they want to keep the current New Zealand flag or change to a new black and blue design featuring a stylised fern and the familiar stars of the Southern Cross. On Thursday, the voting packs go out and people have until the 24th of March to cast their votes. This morning, John Key said if the alternative flag is rejected, people will soon start to regret it.
Well, if they don't vote for change now, they'll never get another chance until we become a republic. And personally, I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime because I think the young royals who are coming through are much loved and actually the royal family's done a very good job.
But the New Zealand First Leader, Winston Peters, says that sounds a lot like a threat and the royal family has nothing to do with changing the flag.
It sounds like he's panicking. He's actually using sort of fear tactics, saying this is your last chance if you don't change the flag. It'll never happen again in your lifetime, virtually, none of which is remotely to do with the issue. But, you know, when you're running with a fetish of a change and the people don't agree with you, including half the people in your political party, then you're rather on a hiding to nothing, frankly, and the Prime Minister should have realised that some time ago.
The Labour leader, Andrew Little, says it wouldn't be such a bad thing if New Zealand does end up waiting to bring in a new flag. He says it's better than choosing a flag no one likes.
The problem is that if New Zealand adopts a flag that some people compare to a tea towel or to a sports strip, we're going to be stuck with that flag for over 100 years. By not accepting the new design flag, that's the only other one on offer, actually we leave the way open. In a reasonable period of time, it might be 10 years, it might be 20 years, to adopt a new flag that actually most people can get in behind and support.
A leading pro-Republic campaigner and the man behind the Change the Flag campaign, Lewis Holden, agrees with John Key this will probably be the last chance to change the flag unless New Zealand became a republic. But the former National Party candidate says the two issues should be kept separate. Mr Holden says the real problem is the flag debate has become too political.
The difficulty has always been that going into last year's election there was bipartisan support for there to be a referendum, but that very rapidly fell apart after the election. We know there's a number of people within the Labour Party that actually support change, and there's a number of people who have said that to us privately. The argument on the other side is, maybe the Prime Minister's been a little too involved in this.
The Electoral Commission is urging people to get enrolled by Wednesday if they want to vote. From Parliament for Checkpoint, May Heron.
22.5 minutes to 6. Tributes are flowing in for the noted Māori academic, writer, activist, Dr. Ranginui Walker, who died last night at the age of 83. He's been hailed as this country's first unofficial race relations conciliator. His determination was to make us see this place through more than only Pākehā eyes. A remarkable man. Te Manu Kōrahi reporter Shannon Haunui-Thompson looks at his life and work.
Heavy rain has fallen throughout the day in Auckland, a sign a great chief has died. Dr. Ranginui Walker was born in Opotiki. His iwi is Whakatohea. Here he is speaking to RNZ in 2009.
I came from a farming background, conservative. My parents voted National. And I was a very shy person. And when I came to Auckland, my one aspiration was to do well in my profession, achieve the goals of becoming qualified, starting with a bachelor's and then finishing with a doctorate.
He also spoke openly about racism he suffered.
I was at Teachers College and came the summer vacation when our hostel closed down, and we went and worked in the freezing works, and we telephoned for accommodation and we were accepted. But when we turned up to get the key, the agent said, "Sorry, no coloured people." Now, that is a hell of a disappointment to a person growing up in New Zealand and believing that the world is our oyster.
Dr. Walker pursued an academic career, which he called a selfish pursuit. He taught at Auckland University for nearly 30 years, specialising in anthropology, education and Māori studies, and was the university's first Māori Pro Vice-Chancellor. Associate Professor Tracy McIntosh of the University Centre of Research Excellent, Ngā Pai o Te Maramatanga, says even though his death was expected, they are in deep mourning.
He has done the intellectual labour that has provided for so many of us the foundation of our work. You know, that the way that he shaped our present political landscape, so that much of the work, or much of the words that he put forward, many of the ideas that he pronounced, seen as absolutely radical at the time, yet are now really a part of the mainstream as a bicultural nation.
Even the man himself believed his greatest contribution to cultural politics in New Zealand has been to act as a mediator between Māori and Pākehā.
As an academic, you are expected to be and free to be the critic and conscience of society. By circumstances, I was kind of impelled to do so on behalf of Māori, because if you believe in social justice, then you take up the cause, and whatever the consequences, you have to take that.
The Māori Council's Manu Paul calls Dr. Walker this country's first unofficial race relations conciliator.
She had this supreme skill of interpreting the Māori world to the Pākehā world of Aotearoa, and vice versa, interpreting the Pākehā world to the Māori people of Aotearoa. And I believe that the state of our race relations has a lot to do with the work she did in bringing two peoples together as one nation.
The Ngāti Hine chairman, Waihoroi Shortland, says the death of Dr. Ranginui Walker will be felt throughout Māoridom as a huge loss.
It's for that work that we will be probably forever sorrowed by this passing. Like many things that pertain to the settlement of treaty grievances, so many of the participants never see the journey through. This tribunal panel will owe a lot, whatever its findings, to Ranginui Walker.
He became involved in liberal causes, raising issues such as the lack of Māori content in the education syllabus, workplace discrimination and land claims.
When enough Māori academics, qualified people, participate in the public service, participate in our tertiary institutions, in education, and Pākehās would learn then to teach Māori as their social and intellectual equals, then we will have become truly one nation as enunciated by Hobson in 1840.
Author of his biography, Paul Spoonley, says he was one of our greatest New Zealanders.
I was always very impressed when Ranginui spoke in public. You know, he'd go along and he'd speak to an audience which was to varying degrees hostile to what he had to say, and he would get up there and he would just voice it. And, you know, it was always very funny when the question and answers came, and he was this very staunch guy. He was a good communicator, but he didn't suffer fools. And somebody would say something, and he would just say, "You're wrong."
Mr. Spoonley remembers being questioned about why a Pākehā was writing a book about such a prominent Māori leader, but says Dr. Walker was more than supportive.
He worked with Māori, Pākehā, Pasifika equally. He didn't see anybody as undeserving of his time and commitment.
Dr. Walker died in his Auckland home and will be taken to Ōrākei Marae. E te uri ihumānea o ihu atamai, e te pātaka iringa kupu, te tātua huahuarere o te kōrero, haere atu rā. Waiho mai a ngue a whakaroau, hei hoa haere. Ko Shannon Honey-Thompson, tēnei.
The time on Checkpoint is 17 minutes to 6. Ranginui Walker's masterpiece, his great seminal work, Ka Whawhai Tonu Mātou, Struggle Without End, stands the test of time. A beautiful tribute from Shannon Honui-Thompson to a great life. Let's talk about something completely different now. The former Mayor of Pitcairn Island will find out his fate on Friday after being found guilty of possessing 1,000 sex images and videos of children. Michael Warren was the Mayor of the tiny UK territory in the South Pacific in 2010 when he was caught with the files on his computer and hard drives. Justice Arthur Tompkins heard closing addresses from the Crown and defence lawyers on Pitcairn Island today before announcing his verdicts. Our Auckland Court reporter Edward Gay, who was sitting beside me patiently in the studio, was watching the proceedings at the British High Commission, where a video link with the island was set up, Extraordinary business, Edward, and he joins us now. What was Warren's lawyer saying?
Well, through the rather slightly shaky internet connection, it went down a few times, but Tony Ellis, who was actually in Auckland speaking to the lawyer in Pitcairn, he said that the island has a small population, a limited number of sexual partners for his client, and his client then therefore turned to pornography. And he said that that was actually commendable given the history of the island. You'll recall that those trials about 10 years, a little over 10 years ago. He said that his client had 400,000 adult pornography images on his computer, 1,000 child pornography images and videos, and some of those were downloaded by accident through a peer-to-peer website. He was also doing some research, Mr. Ellis said, that, and this came in light of those historic child sex trials. Mr. Ellis said his client wanted to know about child abuse and what it was, and he was alarmed that these images were online. He felt that he couldn't go to authorities to alert them that these images were online because effectively, given the island's history, he'd be putting his own head in the noose.
Okay, so that was the defence line. The Crown says, though, this was about sexual gratification, full stop.
That's right. The Crown prosecutor, Kieran Raftery, said of the 179 files that were downloaded, 149 of those were of child sex, and that this was no chance or accident. He also pointed to some of these file names, they have explicit details in the file name. There could be no mistake. He said there was also evidence that Warren had previewed some of the files before downloading them, and that after the preview, sometimes a day afterwards, he would then download them. And these files, some of them also were moved from the computer to other hard drives and burned onto CDs. He said that this was Warren effectively collating his own collection. Mr. Raftery said Warren also took part in sex chats with young people. He also made a film of himself, and this showed that rather than being shocked or alarmed about what was on the internet, Warren was actually encouraging it. In regards to the research, Mr. Raftery said Warren never took these concerns to authorities in the UK and New Zealand or the police on the island, and Warren will be sentenced on Friday, New Zealand time.
Edward Gay, thank you very much indeed, Edward. The time on Checkpoint is just coming up to 13 minutes to 6. The wife of a man who was stabbed outside his liquor store says nowhere is safe after they were robbed for the 10th time in 5 years. Sarabjit Singh was stabbed in the back on Charland Avenue in Manurewa late last night. Neighbours from across the road chased the three attackers away, who threw bottles at them as they ran. Muriel Baker has more.
Meninda Preet Kaur, the victim's wife, says last night was a sleepless one. She visited her husband in the hospital this morning, where he's in a stable condition, and he gave her a typical Kiwi response about how he's coping.
Yeah, he said, "Oh, no worries, I feel better." I asked him, "You got pain?" Yeah, he said, "Yeah, pain too, but no worries, I'm better," because I know he's big worry about me.
So even though he's injured in hospital, he's worried about you?
Yeah.
The police say the attack was over just a small amount of alcohol. It's not the first time the couple have been threatened with a knife at their Charland Liquor Centre. In fact, Ms. Kaur says the store's been robbed 10 times in the last 5 years.
We are not safe anywhere. All people, they are doing drugs or anything because if we are scared, and they are make to us more than scared,
Ms. Kaur is grateful to her friends and neighbours who came to her husband's aid during the attack. One of them was Nina Emilio, who was across the road having a barbecue when she says she saw it unfold. She says her family ran across the road to confront the attackers, while she stayed with Mr. Singh until emergency services arrived.
He staggered when I ran out, so I caught him and sat him down, and I stayed with him the whole time. And so I looked out and everyone's there, so I told everyone to come out on the road and keep an eye out until the police got there. And yeah, he was all right. I was just helping him with his breathing and everything.
Sanjit Singh, who's from the dairy next door and has known Sarabjit Singh since the liquor centre opened, says the local residents are good people.
With what happened last night, with the support of the neighbours,
that gives you a little bit of confidence that, hey, look, these people are there, they're looking out for us as well, so that kind of weighs it out, the concern with the support of the neighbours.
He says he plans to meet with police to discuss ways they can make the area safer. A 19-year-old man has been charged with aggravated robbery and faces up to 14 years in jail. The police are still searching for 2 other men, but say they've found a car linked to the attack and are also going through CCTV footage. For Checkpoint, Muriel Baker.
Just before we go on at 11:26, an update on what's happening in the Oscars. Brie Larson has won Best Actress in a Leading Role. The Revenant has picked up Best Directing, so we're getting towards the end of the show. We will go live to LA after 6 o'clock. But let's go to Northland now. There's alarm in Northland at warnings that Kiwi Rail is about to mothball a stretch of the Northern Line. Northland MP Winston Peters says he has documents to prove there'll soon be no trains running north of Cody, which is near Whangarei. Lois Williams reports.
At present, log trains run as far north as Aotearoa near Kaikohe, but the only customer on the Aotearoa to Whangarei stretch has been the Marasumi Woodchip Company, bringing logs from the far north to its mill at Portland, just south of Whangarei. Kiwi Rail has confirmed it will no longer be serving its only customer, but without giving a reason. But Marasumi has told RNZ News today Kiwi Rail won't renew the contract when it expires in August because the line is uneconomic. Winston Peters says he has documents showing Kiwi Rail's wagons are past their use-by date, bridges on the line are unsafe, and he says the line's been doomed by neglect. The Transport Minister Simon Bridges said in Parliament last October there was no intention to close the line, and he confirmed that this afternoon. But Winston Peters says the intention's been clear for months, and while he's challenged it, local councils have sat back and done nothing.
What is wrong with councils when they don't go ape about this matter? They just come to the next meeting and accept it. This is it's unbelievable. Complicit, docile, accepting, but they're not being the voice for their people.
A Marasumi spokesman says the company will have to look at trucking all of its logs to the Portland chip mill, and it's not sure how that's going to stack up economically. It could mean as many as 150 extra log truck trips a week on State Highway 1. The chairman of Northland's Transport Committee, John Bain, says that's not desirable, and neither is any risk to the viability of the wood chip industry.
Any time Northland has a contract that's not continued, it becomes a real concern to all of us. It's not just the train on the rail. It then has an ongoing effect for all the other people who are involved. We've got to have a look at the whole shooting match to make sure that the industry isn't destroyed completely, and that would be a deep concern to everybody in Northland.
Kiwi Rail says the line itself from Aotearoa to Kauri, north of Whangarei, will remain in place, but Mr Peters says it'll be left to deteriorate, just like the Whangarei to Dargaville line did once the trains stopped. He says that's essentially closure by stealth, and Mr Bridges should resign. For Checkpoint, Lois Williams.
Tomorrow is Super Tuesday in the US, a day on which more delegates can be won by US presidential aspirants than on any other single day on the primary calendar. But where Donald Trump appears to be gaining momentum on the right, on the left, Bernie Sanders, their non-establishment candidate, appears to be in need of some. If Hillary Clinton beats him by any sort of margin on Super Tuesday, the against-the-odds campaign of Senator Sanders will be in trouble. Here's Nathan Frandina from Reuters.
Fresh off his primary loss to rival Hillary Clinton in South Carolina, Senator Bernie Sanders is looking ahead.
Tuesday, over 800 delegates are at stake, and we intend to win many of them. Thank you all.
Are you surprised?
Tuesday will see 11 nominating contests for the Democrats and 12 for the Republicans, hence the name Super Tuesday. The day could be a critical turning point for all candidates, especially Sanders. He needs a breakthrough win to keep his hopes alive. He won New Hampshire, only to lose Nevada and South Carolina, falling to Clinton in the Palmetto State by 48 points on Saturday.
Thank you so much from one end of this state to another.
Despite Sanders trying to court the African American vote, exit polls showed Clinton winning 9 out of every 10 black voters. The question now is whether the Democratic Socialist will be able to expand his support beyond his base of predominantly young white liberals. It's a base he's energized by attacking income inequality and Wall Street excess.
If Wall Street does not end its greed, we will end it for them.
The verdict from Super Tuesday could deliver a clear sign on whether Sanders will rebuild his momentum and convince voters he's the right candidate to take on the Republicans.
Heading home, a West Coast couple has got offside with their neighbours because they play music while tinkering in the garage. Janice and Edgar enjoy listening to Radio New Zealand Concert, RNZ Concert, but a neighbour has complained the volume is too noisy and the sound is bouncing off the tin garage. The couple, aged in their 70s, say their music isn't loud. The dispute made it all the way from Greymouth to the pages of the Sunday Star Times. So we decided to call them to discuss it, including a $500 noise control notice, which Janice Lee says they're appealing.
Yeah, that's right. It seems a lot for something that is usually a pleasure.
How loud do you have the music?
Look, we have it just loud enough so we have something good to listen to while we're working, doing different things in the garage, and yeah, it's not loud.
I'm reading the Sunday Star Times story about it, and your neighbour says it's a tin garage and the music bounces off it.
Right, the tin garage was built by Total Span. It's not an old dunga of a garage, it's modern. It's the bouncing off is her story. We have the two speakers which face into our working space, and it's not, not
And what do you do in there when you're listening to RNZ Concert?
Painting, bit of woodworking, bit of everything, changing things, putting them on other things. It's nothing new that people do in garages.
And do you alter the volume according to composers? For example, if it's a fairly heavy Wagner, do you think, oh, we better turn that down?
Oh, sure. If I don't like the music, I turn it down or off. And in general, because the concert program has a lot of different things, there's not just classic, there's world music, there's jazz, there's even modern music on some sort of Sunday afternoon. So it is a total variety. It just isn't one kind, and it also has news and interviews, so it's a real variety.
It's a potpourri on RNZ Concert. Has the neighbour come over and complained? Has the neighbour come over and said, Janice, could you turn it down, or has it not worked like that?
She came over a few years ago and said, was there any reason that I was listening to it? But then this particular neighbour has complained a lot over various issues, so yeah, at that point I thought, can't see why I have to justify my choices of classic or country, whatever I might choose.
So has anyone formally quantified it? Has anyone turned up with measuring equipment and said, this is how many decibels it is, this is not appropriate? Has that ever taken place?
No. Last time they came, there's been two incidents when they've come out. The last time I was aware that there was a little gadget that is called the sound level reading, and I said to him, have you got your sound level reading with you, thinking that would solve the matter, and he said, no, I don't need it, and that was as far as it got, and he said, it's not the point. I say it's excessive, so it is.
And what time is the music on from and until?
All right, look, we don't put it on from 7 till 7, which is what the CEOs assumed, and it's not on every day. It's occasionally when we're there, and it's usually 9-ish if we're there. We're not doing it all the time. It's not a long-standing radio that never gets switched off.
So what are you doing now? Are you turning it down? Are you spending less time in your garage? What are you doing, Janice?
At the moment, the garage feels uncomfortable, the music feels uncomfortable, because we are not sure when noise control officers are going to come in and try the same procedure.
Janice, we'll play you something. I know we're RNZ National and your concert, but pick a song, make a request. We'll play it as long as you promise to keep the volume down. What would you like us to play?
Okay, Bach. What will you say? Bach violin concerto.
Oh, that's pretty. Your neighbour won't complain about that. I'm just listening to Bach underneath us here. Let's keep Bach on while we do the feedback. Can we keep Bach rolling underneath? I feel like a Concert FM It's not called Concert FM anymore, is it? It was 2IC when I was a young fellow. Now it is RNZ Concert. Keep up, John. Minimum wage, superannuitants get half a living wage a week. Didn't politicians get more than this in their pay rise, asked Debbie P. My God, Paulino sounds like Donald Trump. Actually, quite a few people have said that, although sounding like Donald Trump at the moment ain't necessarily a bad thing. Whatever you think of the guy, he's doing the numbers in the Republican primary. Winston is correct. The regional councils appear inept. Poor riding will not be helped by the rail link being replaced by logging trucks, says Leo from Ellerslie. And it's not tomorrow for Super Tuesday, it's our Wednesday. Of course, that is the case. It is Super Tuesday in the United States, which is Wednesday here. We're going to have lots of reporting from that because, as we said into the intro to that, so we might have got the day wrong, but we got the fact that it is the most defining of the primaries because there is the most to be won in a single day on that day. So how will Sanders go? How will Trump go? We will look at all of that on Wednesday, 6 o'clock. Kia ora everyone, you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm John Campbell. Thank you for being with us. Coming up in the next half hour, Oscars host Chris Rock introduced himself today as the host of a show otherwise known as the White People's Choice Awards. We are live to the Oscars. We're back in Fiji as children prepare to go back to school a week after Cyclone Winston. How are they coping? Alex Perrottet is there. Restaurateur John Paulino announces a second run at the Mayoralty. It was an extraordinary media conference. We talked to Todd Niall. He was there. But first, here's the news with Leilani Mamoisia.
Kia ora, good evening. The adult minimum hourly wage will rise 50 cents to $15.25 from April the 1st. The starting out and training hourly minimum wages rates will increase from $11.80 to $12.20 per hour, remaining at 80% of the adult minimum wage. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Bramwell.
Since 2009, the National-led government has raised the adult minimum wage by $2.75. The Workplace Relations Minister, Michael Woodhouse, says this year's increase will directly benefit almost 153,000 workers and will increase wages throughout the economy by $75 million per year. Meanwhile, a lobby group estimates the living wage should be increased by 55 cents to $19.80 per hour. Living Wage Aotearoa says employers adopting the rate can make a significant difference to addressing inequality, which it argues is not only good for workers and their families, but also for local economies. From Parliament, Chris Bramwell.
An eyewitness to the shootings at the Ashburton Work and Income Office has described the moment a masked man entered the building and took aim at the receptionist, Peggy Noble. Russell Tully is on trial in the High Court in Christchurch for the murder of Ms Noble and Lee Cleveland and the attempted murder of two of their colleagues in September 2014. Lucy Waller, who was in line waiting to be seen, held back tears as she described seeing a man with a shotgun come through the door and calmly approach Ms Noble. She said Ms Noble was preoccupied and didn't seem to notice him standing close to her as he lifted the gun and opened fire. Ms Waller froze for a moment before running for the front door, all the time hearing the receptionist screaming and a further 1 or 2 shots. The Waikato District Health Board says it will not transfer patients in future if there is not a doctor available to assess the patient on arrival. The Health and Disability Commissioner, Anthony Hill, says the DHB and ABI Rehabilitation New Zealand Limited breached patient rights when a trauma patient was transferred from Waikato Hospital to a rehab facility in 2012. The 58-year-old patient had been in a serious accident but had made good progress in hospital. However, he died within days after he was transferred on a Friday night with no doctor available to assess him on arrival. The Executive Director of the Waikato Hospital Service, Brett Paradine, admits that was poor.
If the receiving facility has the right staffing and skills to accept a patient who's transferred, then that would continue. But certainly that transfer shouldn't have happened in these circumstances, and no, that will not happen in future.
Brett Paradine says the DHB has apologised. Suggestions Kiwi Rail's about to mothball a stretch of line in Northland are causing alarm. Kiwi Rail is scrapping its contract with the Marusumi Wood Chip Company to rail logs from the far north to Whangarei. Lois Williams reports.
The Transport Minister Simon Bridges says there's no intention to close the Northland line. However, the Northland MP Winston Peters says he has documents showing no trains will run north of Kauri near Whangarei after August. Comments by Marusumi confirm that. At present, the trains carry logs from Aotearoa near Kaikohe for the company's chip mill in Portland, south of Whangarei. But Marusumi says Kiwi Rail has declined to renew the freight contract when it expires in August because the line's uneconomic. Mr Peters says the rail companies neglected the line so badly it's no longer fit to run trains on, and Mr Bridges should resign. This is Lois Williams.
A senior Vatican official has acknowledged that the Catholic Church made enormous mistakes in dealing with allegations of child sex abuse in Australia. Cardinal George Pell, who is in charge of Vatican finances, was giving evidence on a video link from Rome to the long-running public inquiry into child abuse in Australia. Some of the victims said they were disappointed he did not reach out to them. David Ridsdale, who was abused by his uncle, paedophile priest Gerald Ridsdale, says Australia's highest-ranking Catholic did not get off to a good start in his latest evidence.
It's early days, but they're very controlled answers. They're very. There seems to be a lot of reference of memory problems before any memory problems have been raised.
Abuse victim David Ridsdale. Movie, makeup and hair designer Leslie Vanderwalt has told her friends and family back in New Zealand to pop the corks because she's bringing home gold from the Oscars. The stylist drove a team of 35 producing the hairstyles, makeup and stuck-on body parts in Mad Max Fury Road. She shares the Oscar for Best Makeup and Hairstyling with Mad Max team members Damien Martin and Alka Wodega, who all spent 7 months filming the post-apocalyptic action movie over 7 months in Namibia. And to sports, Kiwis and Sydney Roosters centre Sean Kenny-Dowell has been cleared of domestic violence charges against his former partner Jessica Pearce. However, the Sydney Court magistrate was highly critical of Ms Pearce and said her evidence in court was calculated, evasive and intentionally framed. Despite an opening round loss for his side, the Crusaders coach Todd Blackadder believes the New Zealand Super Rugby Conference is still anyone's to win. The Crusaders were edged 27-21 by the Chiefs on Saturday night, but Blackadder believes it would be foolish to read too much into the result, though he's bracing his side for another demanding local derby against the resurgent Blues in Christchurch on Friday night. Gianni Infantino has his first day in charge of football's world body tonight, and he says he'll get straight into it on day one. Infantino takes over from Sepp Blatter as FIFA president after a major corruption scandal hit the organisation. Infantino says there may be more skeletons in FIFA's closet and they must cooperate fully with the authorities.
The reforms need to be implemented now. They need to implement it from day one immediately. So I will go up to the office and start looking at concretely how to implement these reforms so that we can then hopefully very soon as well concentrate on football.
New FIFA President Gianni Infantino. And that's the news. Shall I?
Do the weather, you.
Yeah? All right, we'll carry on with the weather.
I could do a promo. I'll do a promo. Listen to Morning Report. It's a very good show. On every morning from 6 o'clock.
All right.
Thanks,
John. All right, and now the Met Service weather to midnight tomorrow. In Northland, there's heavy falls and possible thunderstorms tomorrow morning. Auckland to Waitomo, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Taihape, Taumaranui. There's rain about Coromandel and a few brief falls reaching Auckland tomorrow, otherwise fine spells during the afternoon or evening elsewhere. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, occasional rain is easing tomorrow and becoming mainly confined to the ranges from the afternoon. Taranaki to Wellington, Wairarapa and Nelson, fine and cloudy periods. Marlborough, Canterbury, a few showers clearing overnight, long fine spells tomorrow afternoon. Bulla, Westland is fine apart from showers in Bulla, which will clear later tomorrow. And Otago, Southland, Fiordland, there's a few showers about Southland and Southern Fiordland, but it's fine elsewhere. And the Chatham Islands, there's a few showers, and it's 6:09.
Thank you, Leilani, very much indeed. Let's go to the Oscars because it's kind of breaking news because we didn't have it at 6 o'clock. So Sandro Monetti, entertainment journalist for the... in fact, we're just waiting. I'm going to tell you who's won then. So, I was going to get Sandro to tell us. So, Spotlight won Best Film. Leonardo won Best Actor. Finally, the tweet site says for The Revenant. And The Revenant also took Best Director, but Brie Larson won Best Actress. So 3 different films taking the top 4 awards, Leilani, which suggests that it wasn't a year dominated by any one great film. We're hoping to get Sandro Monetti live from LA to tell us all about this. But we're going to... Todd Niles just wandered in, so... Well, not wandered in, you walked in with great purpose and conviction, Todd. Restaurateur John Polino, hoping it's second time lucky. He's going to run for the Auckland mayoralty again. He launched his second bid for the mayoral change today with a heated exchange in which he said there were lies and corruption in city politics. Extraordinary. Todd was at the launch. He interviewed Mr. Polino. You can watch it on our website. That was an extraordinary interview too. Todd, John Polino seemed angry.
He was angry. I mean, I haven't been to a political thing like that. It was basically raised voices with a group of media for 20 minutes. He quite quickly got very agitated that anyone wanted to ask questions about 2013.
His problem was he never said anything in 2013.
No.
Right?
No, and he thought that was completely proper because his view was that he didn't want to descend at that time into gutter level politics. So he put out one media statement and left the country because he had busy things to do. And even now, returning for a second tilt at the biggest political directly elected job in the country, he kind of thought, put that behind you, Auckland. No one's interested except the media who are put up to it by Len Brown's people at the time, and he wanted to move on.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. I'd just recommend people watch that interview you did with you. Lots of interest in Mr. Polino's campaign team because it includes Simon Lusk and Carrot Graham, both of whom featured, of course, in Nicky Hager's Dirty Politics.
Yeah, there were questions about that. Simon Lusk, I'm not quite sure how long he's in. He's a sort of a strategist. Carrot Graham today was there for the launch today. Interestingly, when you asked the pair of them afterwards, who do we contact tomorrow, they were uncertain as to whether it was going to be Carrot Graham still there or John Polino. But yeah, there were questions about these people turned up in Nicky Hager's book. Is Mr. Polino introducing dirty politics? He said, no, these are simply the best people available. And so that's why they're on his team. But, you know, with Cameron Slater as well, who'd helped set up a media interview, there were lots of questions about why these people are involved with someone who says he's risen above all that stuff that went on in 2013.
Has he got a show, do you think?
He's got passion, he's got belief in himself. He's putting out a book soon with Polino's view on how to fix Auckland. It's not clear how much backing he's got. He's funding it himself. It's quite crowded on the centre-right. He's got a big job to do to put 2013 behind him.
Todd Niall, thank you. What a fascinating old press conference, media conference and launch that was. Todd Niall, our Auckland reporter, really appreciate it. Todd, let's go now to LA where Sandro Monetti, entertainment journalist, is standing by. Sandro, I was going to let you announce everything because it's kind of breaking news, but I stole your thunder. But Spotlight for Best Film, was that a surprise?
How about that? Yes, it was. So Mad Max Fury Road won the most Oscars with 6, but it did not win the big Oscar of Best Picture. Yes, as a lifetime journalist, I love a movie where reporters are superheroes. So I was leading the cheering here in Hollywood as Spotlight, the story of investigative reporters on the Boston Globe investigating dark deeds in the Catholic Church, wins Best Picture ahead of the slight favourite, The Revenant.
Yeah. The Revenant took Best Director, right? It's really split. And Leonardo finally gets an Oscar.
And everybody expected it up until an hour beforehand, because the big shock of the night was when Sylvester Stallone did not win for Best Supporting Actor for reprising Rocky Balboa in Creed. he was knocked out by British stage actor Mark Rylance, who won for his role as a Soviet spy in Bridge of Spies. And after that happened, all of us are thinking,
right,
maybe anything could happen. Maybe Leo could not win. But he did, well-deserved, about time, brilliant speech, classy guy, great actor.
Now, the Oscars Twitter site says, such an incredible night, 4 exclamation marks. Was it?
No, there have been much better Oscar ceremonies over the years, but it wasn't a complete disaster. There have been much worse ones as well. I think it was an important night for changing Hollywood. Host Chris Rock did not shy away from the diversity controversy, which has dominated the news here. I am, of course, referring to the fact that for the second year running, every actor nominee was white. And rather than just making a few jokes about that at the beginning or a few political statements, it was the running theme of the whole ceremony. And there was a real high point, actually, when the Academy president, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, came out and said, we're not just aware of what's happening, we're changing it. So this isn't going to be a problem again. She was announcing how the Academy is changing its membership rules, its voting rules, so that this rather sort of shameful episode where the Oscars does not seem to reflect the wider community, that should change.
Yeah, we had April Rain on earlier, the woman who started the Oscars So White hashtag. So this is the kind of the end of the old guard, and something new and exciting will happen next year, or will that be too soon, Sandro?
Well, it's interesting because the bookies have already got as favourite to win Best Picture next year, The Birth of a Nation, the story of a slave uprising with an almost entirely black cast. So there we go. We could be talking about the diversity issue in a rather different way next year.
We thoroughly look forward to it. Sandro Monetti. Thank you, Sandro. Sandro Monetti, live from LA. So Leonardo gets his award. But Spotlight gets Best Film 5:15. More than a week on from Cyclone Winston, the greatest need in Fiji is still fresh water, food and sanitation. As donations come in from around the world, an American man is volunteering. And here's why. In 1997, Robert Arrington spent a summer on Gamia Island spearfishing with the Fisher family. He's now a TV presenter and he's kept in touch with the Fishers ever since, but he hasn't heard from any of them since Cyclone Winston hit. He's now fundraising desperately for the island and he's preparing to travel there to help rebuild. He told me about the Fishers and the island via Skype video and how he gets to such a remote place from his home in Florida.
From Miami to Los Angeles to Nandi. The next morning, hop on a flight from Nandi to Tiguni. Then from Tiguni, you would go to the landing or just take a small boat and go from there out to Gamea. And the Fishers have an establishment called Lally Bay, which is a eastward-facing bay, beautiful. And they've taken many steps over the years to thwart something like this. Like they would go out and they would get these very large clams and bring it out to the deep water in front of their home and keep it there. Basically saying that if they ever needed food, they would have food there that they could go get. They also had it so that local poaching, that no one would ever take them and totally wipe them out. They always knew they would be in front of their establishment where they could take care of them. Very near to their home, they have a freshwater spring, an aquifer that comes up that you would go and dip water out of. And they're some of the most I don't even know the right word, but they can build and create anything. So between all the coconut and having fresh water, knowing that they have clams out front, if they live through the storm, I know that these people will be they're gonna do fine, but they're gonna need supplies. That's why as soon as I heard the storm hit Gamea almost head on, I reached out to my YouTube channel, which I have some of the most amazing loyal subscribers you can imagine. I said, look, you guys, I'm going to do what I can, but if you guys could donate $5, please. And we've raised about $3,500 on that. Once I find out what the Fishers need, I can go to specific purveyors and get stuff for them. Because I can tell you something, the Fishers by nature are givers. They did not know who I was in 1997. I did not know who they were. When we flew there, Josh asked me somewhere in between Fiji and California, where are we staying? And I said, I don't know. But they said they would meet us there at the airport, and they did. They're wonderful people.
Robert, how many times have you been back to Gamea since that first trip?
I think 6 times. And I've taken my mom there twice, and I actually took a film crew, Real Adventures. We went there and shot a fishing show there.
And so have you heard from them in any way, shape or form since Cyclone Winston hit?
No way, shape or form. I've emailed, I've tried everything I can to get in touch with them. No phones, no email, nothing works.
And what's your sense of how that island will have coped in terms of the structures on it in a storm as strong as Windstone?
No good. The reason is because everything, so you've got very steep walls that are cultivated for cassava. So you have tilled ground and very soft, fertile ground that's tilled. And all the establishments on Tonga and Tonga Village and Lolly Bay, all the establishments are down right at the water level. So with the storm coming head on, you know there's going to be drastic storm surge coupled with intense wind and rain. So I'm thinking mudslides, I'm thinking catastrophic storm surge that would just weaken any foundation with all the mudslides coming off the side of the mountain. It is mind-boggling to me how bad it is. It's terrible. It's like a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10.
And so what will you do to help?
Anything. Right now I'm waiting to find out if I can fly there. I'm going to fly there. I've got several people that want to fly there with me to help, different tradesmen, people that are affluent. I've got money. I mean, whatever I can do to help. Those people, literally, whenever I went and lived in Fiji, I was a broken human being. And they gave me such a sense of who I was. And I mean, like my wife, she's sitting over here on the ground right now. When we were having our first baby right now, if it would have been a boy, his name would have been Rapate. And Rapate is Robert in Fijian, just as a significance and an indication of how important Fiji is to me personally. So I'll do anything I can.
RNZ international reporter Alex Perrottet has been doing stunning work in Fiji. He's still there. Over the weekend he visited the remote Taveuni Island, which isn't far from Gamea Island, where Robert's friends the fishers live. Alex, welcome to the program again. Just before we move on, what can you tell us about Gamea Island?
Well, I could see it from Taveuni, John, and it's good news because you can fly into there. I flew in on a little small twin otter plane. It looks like a desert, you know, like a lot of the places here. Trees just stripped. A lot of the water coming up, the coastal rush that they're talking about, all that salt water has just killed a lot of the vegetation. But there is one little ray of good hope, and that is that the pineapple, it's so short and stocky, that seems to have survived. It's one crop that seems to be still intact here.
Amazing. Kids are going back to school, Alex. It seems very soon. Are the schools ready for them? Because many were operating as shelters. And are the kids psychologically able to cope with that?
Well, it's actually very important that they go back to school, and Save the Children are sitting today, and they're basically saying how important this is that children have a sense of routine. The education ministry has done well. It's opened up heaps and heaps of schools, although I've noticed many that I know that aren't on the list because of such intense destruction. But it's great to see after just 1 week that the children are getting back to school. UNICEF, Save the Children, they're all doing a lot of good work here, but they're very concerned about the ongoing psychological impacts. Some kids aren't talking much, and when you hear the harrowing tales, I mean, just being in Taveuni, you can hear about, obviously the cyclone hit them much earlier, so we're hearing the stories of the middle of the day where people are seeing the corrugated iron, the roofs flying around, sheltering children, running from one devastated house to another refuge. These children are going to take a long time to recover.
Yeah, they are. Alex Perrottet, thank you so much. Alex's work is available not only on RNZ National, but also on RNZ International's excellent website. Right, 23 minutes past 6. The first weekend of the Super Rugby competition is over. To start some interesting results for the New Zealand franchises. The Blues, who finished second to last in 2015, beat the defending champion Highlanders in Auckland on Friday night. It was a cracker of a game. But what followed was probably an even bigger surprise. The Hurricanes were trounced by the Brumbies 52-10 in Canberra. And what else? Crusaders Chiefs, that was a good game too. Let's talk through it with Matt Chatterton, our sports reporter. Let's start on Friday night. Blues Highlanders. I raced up to Eden Park after the show on Friday. I thought it was a great game.
It was. Tana Umaga has really made his presence felt after even game one. You know, it was a very tight contest. It was sort of toing and froing in between both throughout the game, and that last try, while slightly controversial regarding the final try with Patrick Tuipulotu, got the Blues across the line and off to a winning start.
I thought the Blues were beautifully composed, particularly when the Highlanders started very strongly. And I feel like there is a kind of resolve there that may be new in terms of this squad.
I think the thing that Tana brings to the team is that real discipline, you know, and a lot of the players really do respect him. Not that I'm saying they probably didn't suit John Campbell, but you know he really expects the best out of his players, and I think they give the best too. So, and there were some standout performers from that game. Blake Gibson, the young flanker, he had an outstanding game.
What a try! Yeah, what a solo try
over Ben Smith. You know, the All Black fullback.
Absolutely.
So fantastic effort, and the entire team, they just seemed to really play well. And the back line, they could do with a little bit of work on defence. There were a couple of times where they didn't look as though they were quite gelling that well. I mean, the Highlanders went over, I think, in the first half. They scored a try where the number 12 didn't even get touched by the Blues defence. But you know, there is a lot to work on, and they'll get there, I think.
They're talking about a lot to work on. Let's talk very quickly about the Hurricanes Brumbies. Yes. They lost by 42 points. I'm not going to say any more. Matt, what's your take from it?
Well, I would say I'm glad I'm not a Hurricanes supporter. To be honest, I think Chris Boyd came out and said that they might have been a little bit complacent after their thrashing of the Crusaders in the pre-season when they won 72-10 or something like that. They went over to the ACT Brumbies. They got beaten in Canberra. Brumbies are looking very good this year.
But they tend to lose in Canberra too. Let's not forget that. It's just not by 42 points.
But the Brumbies are going to be a tough team this year, and I just don't think the Hurricanes were quite prepared. They were supposedly accused of being a little bit unfit. Chris Boyd rubbished those claims, so we'll have to see how it unfolds in the next few weeks.
OK, we've got very quickly Chiefs Crusaders. I thought that was a good game too.
Yes, now that was another good game. Unfortunately, there was an incident in the 65th minute where Reid Prinsep was knocked unconscious. Yeah. And he unfortunately wasn't able to be replaced with the flanker, Tim Boys, that he replaced just moments before. The Crusaders then had to put on a player, a replacement halfback. Rules around that are probably going to need to change because that's unsafe for everyone involved. And it ended up meaning that when the Chiefs scored their final try in the line-out drive, the Crusaders were using a halfback instead of a flanker to try and stop that line-out drive.
OK, Sean Kenny-Dowell, Kiwis and Roosters centre. Quickly, Matt, sorry.
Yes, not a problem. Well, he has been found not guilty on 11 charges of domestic violence relating to his relationship with former girlfriend Jessica Paris. Now, she is also an Olympic hopeful. She wants to go to the Olympics for athletics. He was found not guilty. The judge or the magistrate found that Ms. Parent said her evidence was calculated, evasive and intentionally framed. Of course, Sean Kenny-Dowell was hospitalised last year because of these. He suffered mentally because of it. So, yes, that's obviously means now that he'll be able to play back in the NRL in 1 week's time.
Our sports reporter Matt Chatterton, thank you so much, Matt. Let's end tonight with one of New Zealand's most threatened birds, the seal, the native blue duck, which became extinct in National Park in 1945, Egmont National Park in 1945, but a recovery program that started in 1990 has now established a sustainable population in that same region. Our Taranaki reporter Robin Martin joined conservationists on the most recent release of the seal.
There are only about 2,500 whio left in the wild, making them rarer than kiwi. Department of Conservation Biodiversity Ranger Donna Worthy says Mount Taranaki is the perfect place to release whio.
It's a really good place to have them because whio are torrent ducks. They like fast-flowing, clean mountain streams. They like rapids, like the whitewater ducks. So we've been releasing whio. We also have over 7,000 hectares of protected area, and it's protected with over 1,000 stoat traps because stoats are the main predators of the whio.
Ms Worthy says the birds are bred in captivity near Christchurch and graduate from a whio boot camp at Turangi before being released.
It's a big aviary that's big enough for them to fly around, and it has a stream in the middle of it with flowing water, and that gets them used to moving over rocky terrain, paddling in the fast water, getting used to rapids, foraging for their own food, and it kind of gets them tough enough to be released into the wild.
The first successful breeding in the park was recorded in 2005 after trapping began in 2003. There are now 33 pairs, and a census last year put the total population in the park at 86. Peter Russell is the captive breeding coordinator for the recovery program. He says in the early days of the project, most birds died after being released, but the corner has now been turned.
It's a numbers game. You've got to get the birds in here, and once they're like now, they're starting to breed, and it's just to get up the numbers, and all of a sudden they're away by themselves. So I don't think we will be releasing too many more in here. Maybe different bloodlines. It's about all.
School kitten is a Whio ambassador. She was rapt to be at the Waiongana River to witness 4 birds being released.
I felt amazing, and it was just really exciting. I was just jumping out of my skin to watch the release. Just seeing the ducks swimming around and trying to go up the rapids and taking photos of them.
So far this season, 29 ducklings have been counted, and Doc says it is hopeful that number will continue to increase. For Checkpoint, Robin Martin.
Thank you, Robin. Delightful piece. Whio, the native blue duck, which is emblazoned on the $10 note, bringing Checkpoint to an end tonight. Lots of feedback. Paul the Comp, our friend Paul in Dunedin, pointing out that Shannon Honui tribute to Ranganui Walker was beautiful. You can hear that on our website if you missed it. A life worth celebrating in such terms. That's Checkpoint for this evening. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to RNZ National, where it's 6:30. Welcome to World Watch PM. I'm John Greaves. Tonight, hopes that the cessation of hostilities in Syria continues to hold. BHP Billiton to sign a settlement over a dam burst in Brazil, and an alarming escalation of anti-gay rhetoric in Indonesia. Those stories and more in World Watch PM. Over the next 5 days, the United Nations and its partners plan to deliver aid to more than 150,000 people trapped in besieged towns and villages throughout Syria, thus providing a cessation of hostilities holds. The UN's also called for unconditional access to the 4.6 million people in difficult-to-reach parts of the country.